I don't know what's wrong with me, said Maria. I just feel tired of everything. And she didn't mean tired like she needed a nap. She meant her soul was tired. The kind of tired that makes you scroll without seeing. That makes a second glass of wine feel like a lifeline. That makes showing up in your own life feel like you're following a script. Like, whose life is this anyway? I've heard different versions of this kind of tired, deep down soul tired, from CEOs, baristas, single moms, spiritual leaders. Different lives, same ache. We've learned to label it burnout, or low vibration, depression, resistance. But what if all of those are just names we slap on the ache when we're too afraid to actually listen to it, or worse, don't even know the ache is speaking? The ache, it isn't a problem, it's a message. It doesn't need fixing, it needs to be heard. It's time to change your perception about the ache because it is a glitch in the matrix, a signal that says the way you're living life, it doesn't fit anymore. Hi, my name is Zara. Throughout this video, I'm probably talking about me, and you too. And by the end of this video, you'll recognize what I'm calling soul ache as what we carry, what it costs us, and what happens when we finally listen to it. Now, let me tell you more about Maria's story, because it sets the stage for this entire video. This was Maria's moment of clarity from her soul ache. That moment when her youngest daughter, age 14, while staring off as she often did, said, "Mom, why does everything about how we do life make me feel so small?" Well, that's when everything cracked open for Maria. You see, she'd built a picture perfect life, six-figure job, clean house, coordinated kids outfit, gluten-free cupcakes at the big sales. She was the one who made having it all look easy. At this point in life, 3 kids, 2 now adults, a husband, beautiful house, perfectly manicured lawn, the luxury SUV, walls lined with accolades and picture perfect celebratory moments. And of course, it was all well documented on all the social sites. Maria had managed to train her older children to be cooperative, polite, quiet, basically replicas of herself. They were refined, they followed rules. And as a collective, we see those qualities as respectful. But her youngest came built different. From the moment she got here, she was not interested in compliance. From the moment she could speak, she started questioning the rules. She had no interest in compliance for the sake of comfort, and Maria knew it. With everything in her, she tried to guide her youngest toward structure, tried to parent her back into the mold. For 14 years, she tried everything and nothing worked. The one promise she did make early on is that she would not break her spirit. So she'd get right to the edge and then she'd pull back. She knew that there was something different about this one. She also knew deep down that different didn't mean wrong or bad. So that day, when her daughter said she felt small, Maria felt those words land like bricks in her chest because her daughter had unknowingly named her ache. Not just the exhaustion, not just going through the motions, but the shrinking. Maria had spent years quietly erasing herself for the sake of the picture, smiling in public, editing her voice with her mom, avoiding conflict with her husband, swallowing the parts of herself that couldn't find room to breathe in that life. And she realized in that moment, her daughter didn't just need new rules. She needed a new mother, one who would choose truth over perfection, one who would stop modeling numbness as normal. Sometimes change happens in a moment. Let me tell you what Maria did not do. Maria did not think about what she had to get together in order to get ready. She didn't light a candle to start her healing journey. She didn't go to a retreat to raise her vibration. She didn't wait to get ready. She just stopped pretending. Because sometimes what we call healing is just a performance of worthiness, trying to prove we're broken enough to earn our way back to wholeness. But the ache itself is the invitation back to the wholeness, and all it needs is your yes. And then sovereignty. Oh, it begins the moment we stop outsourcing truth, which all too often is to the very people and systems who taught us how to lie to ourselves in the first place. So, in that moment of clarity, in response to her daughter, Maria turns to her and says, "I'm sorry, baby, and I understand. I don't know how to fix this, but I know something has to change for all of us." She pulls her daughter close, kisses her forehead, and then adds, "Maybe Mama's been shrinking too." They hold each other in that quiet knowing. Her daughter pulls away and walks off. And Maria, she reaches for her trusted friend, Cabernet Sauvignon. Guess what happens when you lean in to embrace change and truth? You make room for more of it. So weeks later, when her daughter entered the house and said, "I told my teacher I'm not doing busy work anymore, so you'll probably get a call." Maria paused, but wasn't surprised. After all, she created the space for this. And so she didn't panic. In fact, she initiated the call and suggested to the teacher, "Let's talk about what actually helps her learn, because busy work isn't it." Maria wasn't just advocating for her daughter, she was breaking a spell, a generational one. Because when Maria heard her daughter say she felt small, she didn't just see her own ache. She saw her mother's resignation, her grandmother's compliance, decades of just be grateful, sweet, and don't make trouble, decades of shrinking. And now, this 14-year-old was holding up a mirror that said, "No more." Now, you don't have to be a mom to understand that moment, or a woman, or in a family at all. Because the ache Maria felt isn't specific to circumstance, it's universal. That ache doesn't care how many degrees you have. It doesn't care if you meditate every morning or doom scroll in bed. It doesn't care if you've built a whole identity around being healed. See, that's the flattening of illusions. The moment you realize pain doesn't follow hierarchies. Titles don't protect you from ache. Even spirituality has been twisted into caste systems. The healed versus the broken, the awake versus the asleep, the one who gets it versus the one who still has work to do. But a soul ache does not care about your altar. It doesn't care about how many retreats you've attended or how many gurus you quote. The ache, a soul ache, is the great equalizer. It humbles the skeptic and the sage alike. It meets the executive crying in a luxury car the same way it meets the Uber driver scrolling through spiritual posts between pickups. And that is where we begin. Because when soul ache shows up, it doesn't ask who you are, it asks if you're listening. I liken that kind of soul ache as a glitch in the system. That constant sense that something is off. When it's constant, we label it as burnout, but that's not it. When we're so tired that we start to say we're just being in our feelings all the time, it's not just a moment of being in your feelings. It's time to start listening because it's your internal system flagging a mismatch. It's your soul tapping the brakes on your life. And if you sit with it long enough, quiet enough, you'll hear it whisper, "I never agreed to these rules. I just inherited them." That moment is likely quiet, but it's also everything. Because the ache always shows up before the breakdown as a signal that the system you've been plugged into isn't designed for your wholeness. And to be clear, when I say the system, I'm not just talking about politics or government or your job. It is every invisible rulebook we've absorbed since birth. Shrink yourself to be lovable. Smile and say you're fine. Work hard enough and you'll be safe. Just don't rock the boat. It's never that bad. But when the system glitches, those rules start to feel like cages. And that's where everything begins to shift. Because once you notice the glitch, you can't unsee it. You start questioning things that used to feel normal. You begin to see just how many of your thoughts, decisions, and behaviors were shaped to fit someone else's idea of who you're supposed to be. And from that moment on, you're not just aching, you're waking. And even more than that, you are remembering not who the world told you to be, but who you've always been underneath it all. Now, what if you started to treat your ache like you treat your check engine light? You wouldn't ignore that light in your car. You might postpone a reaction to it, but you would not just act like you don't see it. You wouldn't keep driving and hope it disappears. At some point, you'd stop, you'd check under the hood, or you'd take it somewhere. Because if you don't, the problem gets worse. Well, it's the same with the ache. Except we're going to name what actually happens. When you ignore it, things around you adapt to it. You figure out how to function in dysfunction. You normalize the noise. You stop expecting more. You start saying things like, oh, it's fine. I just need a vacation. This is just what it feels like to be an adult. And eventually, and it is most adults, you start to normalize that cage. You decorate it and you call it purpose. Now, here's what I mean by that. You take the pain, you build a routine around it, you call it a personality, you say things like, this is just who I am. I've always been this way. It may not be ideal, but it works. You make it look beautiful, even though it's still a prison. And the ache, all along, wasn't seeking to punish you. It was just trying to get your attention. It was saying then and it's saying now, this isn't the life you came here to live. Let's see how deep this thing goes. If you don't know the ache is speaking and learn to listen to it, you'll also never really stand in your sovereignty because it's short-circuited by shame, blame, and the three hindering eyes. Let's look at shame. Oh, it creeps in with, you should be over this by now. Other people have it worse. You're being ungrateful. Or blame will completely take the wheel. They made me this way. If they hadn't left, or if they just stayed, or if they hadn't lied, if they stopped judging, I'd be free. What people don't realize is how blame and shame are natural defaults when you forego your sovereignty. But it gets deeper because the three hindering eyes inevitably show up and seal the deal. Insecurity. Other people are happy. Why can't I be like them? Inadequacy. If I just work harder, this emptiness would go away. And inferiority. Maybe I just don't deserve more. These are not personality flaws. They're conditioned responses, echoes of a world that taught you to silence your own knowing. They don't show up because you're weak. They show up instead of curiosity, instead of courage, instead of remembering who you are. And they keep showing up until you stop trying to outperform your ache and start letting it guide you back to yourself. Because here's the truth. The ache isn't just a signal that something's wrong. It is the opening, the internal GPS waking up, the soul knocking saying, come back, return home. It is leading you to remember. And once you answer that knock, everything changes. All you need is an expanded perspective. And in part 2, we're digging deeper than you ever thought about.